Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and this is not Spawn Year. It's day 2 of my comic review video day calendar, and today we're going to take a look at another issue that is not a Spawn comic. No Spawn comics for the next 364 days. We're going to take a look at an issue that I have owned for a long time but have never actually read. We're jumping to Marvel today, and this is an issue that doesn't exactly stand alone but is a really fun read. I wasn't lost. I knew what I was looking at. There was stuff that had happened before this that led up to the current moment that we're at the beginning of this, but not an irritating amount of recap. This is Captain America number 117. Look, folks, it's a key issue. I have no idea what this is worth right now and what it would cost you to go get one, but this is the first appearance of a now pretty major character in the MCU, especially considering that he is Captain America these days. It is the Falcon, a character that I like a lot in the movies, and I was not the biggest fan of Falcon and Winter Soldier, but I still really like movie I almost said Tom Wilson, movie Sam Wilson quite a bit, and I've not read him a ton in the comics. So I guess a few years ago I checked into a run once or twice. I forget who wrote that. There was a real political Falcon Cap run when Captain America was still elderly and Falcon had taken over, and I liked what I read of that, but I haven't looked at much else with this character, and he has an origin here that is very, very different from the one we get in Winter Soldier. Of course, this is an example of a thing that I think makes a lot of sense that you wouldn't directly adapt because it would be very strange on film. I enjoyed it. It's not bad, but it's somewhat dated in its depiction of this black man from Harlem that winds up in Haiti and is trying to lead a revolution, particularly in his speech, of course, but also, I mean, just look at this outfit. And Captain America, by the end of this, tries to get him to wear a superhero suit because that's just what you do when you're trying to be a hero and lead people in the right direction and help people. He seems to think that this will strike fear in the hearts of criminals, and I guess that makes sense when you're wearing red, white, and blue, and that's not exactly your MO anyway, but we'll get there. I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, this opens with a hilarious and wonderful, drew me in right away, setup and premise. Apparently in the last issue, which of course I have not read. By the way, I own some 200-300 issues of Captain America. I've never read any of them. I've never been a big comic Captain America guy. My wife likes Captain America a lot. She's not a big comics reader, but she's enjoyed collecting some of this with me. And when I bought out collections, my wife has insisted that I keep all the Captain America. I guess just to have it, just to collect, because she hasn't really read much of it herself. But I have a lot of this stuff, and I must have bought this in a collection years ago. I was kind of surprised to find a while back that I owned this. I was like, oh, that's the first appearance of Falcon. It was just kind of sitting in a box. So that was exciting when I figured that out. Anyway, Captain America, apparently in the very previous issue, switched bodies with the Red Skull. It's a classic body switching issue. You know, kind of like Lionel Luthor and Clark Kent in that season 4 Smallville episode. So Red Skull does this on purpose. He's got his hands on the Cosmic Cube. Yeah, these villains always after the Cosmic Cube, and of course that's really classic Red Skull, and that's even what he was after in the first Avenger movie. Would have been really funny if this is what that had adapted. He's all excited because he's going to be able to not only, he thinks, kill Captain America by sending him to a remote island where he'll be attacked by the Exiles, a bunch of professional killers that apparently found the Cosmic Cube themselves in the first place, and Red Skull banished them to this island so he could have the Cosmic Cube all to himself. And Captain America has, again, he's in Red Skull's body, and he's being sent to the island with all these murderers that want Red Skull dead for sending them there. So it's a real fun premise right away, a very classic Stan Lee kind of premise, and Red Skull's plan is to go around and defame the name of Captain America by acting exactly the opposite of the altruistic man that Captain America usually is, by being all self-aggrandizing and arrogant and enjoying his fame and basking in the glory too much. Meanwhile, Captain America himself has to fight for his life in the guise of Red Skull while he goes up against people like this guy who has what he calls a murder chair. You've gotta love 60s Stan Lee. This stuff is the best. I was shocked by how much fun I was having with this just a few pages in. It's relentlessly entertaining, and I now want to read a lot more of this run before and after this. Art by Gene Colan, I should have mentioned. This comes out in 1969, and the art in this reminds me a little bit of what Walt Simonson will do on Thor just a few years after this. I like the art in this a lot. The action is incredibly dynamic. Maybe I bring this up too much. It does have that thing with a lot of backgrounds that are just swaths of color. As I said yesterday, that's done often, I think, just to cut corners a little bit so that the art can be turned in on time, and that's understandable, especially for a thing like this, where it's got, really good, exciting, well-detailed art, and I don't know how artists like this are able to make monthly deadlines. Even now, it's nuts. Even on, you're working on a tablet or something. I don't know how these guys do this, but especially on with pencil on real paper. But anyway, it takes Captain America a little bit too long to realize, oh yeah, that's right. It's almost like he doesn't remember his own continuity and his own villain. He's like, that's right, I'm wearing a mask right now. The Red Skull in this period in the comics has a Red Skull mask over a mysterious face. Nobody knows what it looks like. And one thing, and I had forgotten about that. And one thing I really like that Stan Lee does here is Lee and Colan. I have to give both of them story credit because of the way the Marvel method works, where Colan probably did quite a bit of the plotting himself as he's drawing this, and then Stan Lee goes in. This is how Stan Lee usually worked. He would give a outline, maybe a really, really broad outline, maybe just a few sentences, and then the artist would put the story together, and then he would go back in later and fill in the balloons. And so these guys, whoever deserves the credit for it, I really like that you never see Red Skull's face. So he takes it off, he takes the mask off, and we see kind of a shadow over his face in his hand there, and then he's going to put clay all over his face to change what the face looks like. I'm sure that would work real well. I'm sure there's no chance that any of the clay would come off. These early Marvel comics always had their own sense of internal logic, and somehow when I'm sucked into a story, I'm buying it on the page, and then later I'm finding myself going, wait a minute, that's ridiculous. Like, the clay would come off. You can't, like, mold your face just with clay to look like however you want to. And a side note, one thing that I was kind of confused about with this is later he'll say, boy, I sure hope after, or just before, I guess it's right here actually, just before he meets the Falcon, he'll say, before he meets Wilson, before he's calling himself that, gee, I sure hope that I don't look too much like myself. Like, I hope I didn't mold my face to look too much like Steve Rogers' face, which would be kind of weird if you could do. He doesn't even have a mirror. It's like, just because I'm imagining my own face, like I know what I look like, I accidentally made my face on top of the Red Skull's real face because I'm in his body. Like, what are the odds of that? But also, who cares? Like, I don't understand why it would be a problem for people to recognize you. What do you want them to what do you want to look like? I guess just some generic person? But why would it be a problem if people saw you as Steve Rogers? The real problem is if they think you're Red Skull because they have murder chairs and stuff and they want to kill you. There's another guy that's got like a robot hand and just wild and crazy fun comic stuff that happens here. Anyway, so meanwhile, you've got, like I said earlier, Red Skull in Captain America's body, basking in the limelight. And not that he actually enjoys the adoration. He complains that everybody is bothering him and that it kind of sickens him how much they love Captain America, and he's getting that praise for the wrong reasons. But he's got big plans. He's going to try to, of course, take over the world, and he's going to turn all of these people into slaves. I really like this full-page spread here with everybody kind of adoring Captain America while simultaneously going, wait a minute, this is weird. Like, he doesn't like cameras. He's usually really shy and humble. Why is he acting like this? And the reason is because he wants to frame Captain America before he takes over the world, ruin his reputation, and make his death, he says, mean nothing. So all of this is about poetry and trying to give him the most embarrassing and horrible death possible. So he's going to die in the guise of his worst enemy, and Red Skull is going to ruin his reputation all at the same time. It's a wonderful plan, and the most Red Skull thing I can think of. Oh, and MODOK is here in one panel, looking for the Cosmic Cube. And then we cut to Sam Wilson, who we find is obsessed with birds and moved to Haiti because he had gotten Red Wing and had this this unexplainable bond with his bird. And then he answers an ad from the Exiles who want a hunting falcon. And then he goes there and realizes he's been hoodwinked into throwing in with a bunch of crazy murderers who take prisoners and have slave labor and stuff. And so he escaped that, and instead of going back to New York, he did the heroic thing, and I guess heroic. I mean, he doesn't go back and try to get any resources or anything. He just stays there, and he's trying to incite the locals to revolution. And Captain America, of course, can relate to all of this. He sees Sam Wilson as a man who cares about freedom and justice, and they stand for the same things, and it's pretty obvious what the whole bird thing symbolizes. At least it's not so on the nose that it's an eagle, but like it's real clear what it is. It's freedom, it's justice. And so immediately Steve Rogers wants to help him, and I kind of half expected him to be like, oh, this isn't my fight, I've got to get home. But when Wilson asks him to stand and help, he says, like, you couldn't stop me, but you're going to need a costume. It's very important. He says something that'll unnerve the Exiles, make them wonder who they're fighting. The only answer is a green leotard that's open in the front. A mask and costume ought to do it, together with a stirring name, like, for instance, the Falcon. And Wilson says, me, a costume clown? Don't put me on, man. And then I love this. Steve Rogers responds with, don't knock it, fella. It's been known to work. Like, again, it's got its own internal logic. These are Marvel comics. If you want to go help somebody, you put on a costume and you have your own secret identity. That's just what you do. We all got to have those. You got to get into the formula. I really want to read more of this, and I found myself kind of transported back. I felt like a kid, not to 69. I wasn't there, but I really felt like a kid reading this. Where I was like, "Ooh, I gotta find out what happens next. Like, how close is Red Skull going to get to ruling the world as Captain America? How bad is his reputation gonna get where Steve has to come back and fix it?" And I also like dealing with, and Stan Lee never did this in subtle ways, but dealing with some real world issues, revolution, these small countries that would be overrun by sociopathic dictators or like gangs, and they would, take over and enslave the locals because it was easy and they could, and the people don't really have a recourse. They don't have any good way to fight back, and if they do, they're afraid that they'll die or their family will die. And that's the reason that Sam can't get them to start a revolution, because they're afraid of what will happen to them, of course. And I like the way that Stan Lee deals with these serious, heavy issues while simultaneously making a really entertaining and ridiculous comic with a lot of insane, fun stuff that happens. And of course, he does that in a lot of the things he writes. But this is a classic example of that. He also has a lot of really good use of, I say he and Colin have a lot of really good use of foreshadowing in this issue. In particular, we see Red Wing before we get to Sam Wilson, before we get to the Falcon. And unless you've looked at the cover really close with, yeah, I got some glare there, with Red Wing there on his arm, you're like, oh, where did this bird come from and what is it doing? Because it helps out Captain America and is fighting off the exiles, because Falcon is always trying to help whoever's in peril with the exiles. He's kind of a vigilante doing that. And then it's several pages before that pays off and we find out where the bird came from. There's also a mention when Red Skull is being Captain America of Cap's kid sidekick. So it's mentioned that somebody's been running around with him in a Bucky costume, and I feel like I've heard about that before. I didn't look this up. I don't remember who exactly that is, but I think it's good foreshadowing that while Captain America is, or while Red Skull is pretending to be Captain America, doesn't have his kid sidekick, Captain America is actually about to get a sidekick. Not a kid, really, but obviously Falcon's going to fill that Bucky role, and I think he's a sidekick for a good long time. I also think it's fun that Captain America's new sidekick himself has a sidekick. But anyway, that's going to do it for me. I really thoroughly enjoyed reading this. I didn't actually crack open my issue. I just read this digitally because this is an old key issue and it's holding together pretty well. But I didn't want to risk messing it up, so I'll probably have to do that with some of these as we go along. Thanks a lot for watching Not Spawn Year, and I'll be back with Day 3 tomorrow. Everybody have a wonderful day.